Hey, what's going on guys, Chris here with another Battlefield 1 weapon guide. And today we're going to be taking a look at the lMG 0818 that came along in the Apocalypse DLC. A fast firing German machine gun that can be equipped on a support loadout as a primary weapon. The fully automatic lMG 0818 is essentially a slightly lighter, modified version of the MG 0815, with its design being updated mainly to shed off some of that weight, to make it an easier weapon to carry around and use on the battlefield. Although it functioned in a very similar way to its older, beefier brother, firing off the same 8mm Mauser rounds and utilising the same mechanism, the 0818 didn't have a chunky water-cooled barrel jacket, but instead had a much thinner 37mm slotted steel jacket with perforated holes, basically allowing air to pass through the jacket to cool the barrel down naturally. This air cooling method cut the gun's weight down by about 3 kg, despite the newer barrel being slightly thicker and heavier. It also meant that troops didn't need to rely on a water source, plus they didn't need to worry about said water freezing over and turning into a block of ice during winter. So I guess it seemed like a much more practical design choice for a weapon built for war. A carrying handle was fitted to the top of the 0818 for easier handling and to make it more portable, a really basic but beneficial feature that was lacking on the 0815 model. But despite being a somewhat improved version of the weapon, the gun's ability to sustain fire and shoot out large volumes of ammunition was a bit limited, with overheating becoming more of a problem due to that thicker barrel, which also would have been really tricky to exchange quickly whilst out on the field, as soldiers would have had to wait for that barrel to cool down in order to swap it over. So once the war kicked off, the Germans really needed a portable machine gun type weapon, with LMGs becoming more popular as the war went on. So they modified their already existing MG08 heavy machine guns and created the MG0815 in the year of 1915. It was a hell of a lot lighter than the previous model, but was still nevertheless a pretty hefty thing to cart around and use effectively on the go. The 0815 went on to be Germany's primary machine gun used throughout the rest of the war, with about 130,000 copies being produced and handed out to troops for frontline service. But just because it was popular doesn't necessarily mean that it was a fantastic piece of kit. It was adequate and did the job, but there was definitely room for improvement, and this is where the 0818 model steps into the scene, being a slightly lighter and more infantry-friendly update. Unaware that the war was pretty close to coming to an end, the 0815 was further developed in 1918 to counter some of its weight issues, and generally become an easier gun to use and carry around, made with the intention of being Germany's new infantry support weapon for offensive operations. And this improved variant was tested on the field in fairly small numbers during the final few months of the war. There's no doubt that the 0818 would have been issued to a lot of soldiers and probably would have replaced the earlier water-cooled model if given the chance. But because the Great War was almost over by the time the gun's production began, it didn't really see very much combat, and the earlier, less ergonomic MG 0815 remained to be Germany's primary light machine gun instead. Now there's two different variants of the lMG 0818 to be unlocked in Battlefield 1. But because it's a DLC gun, you're first going to need to have that Apocalypse DLC or the Premium Pass to gain access to those weapon assignments. The first variant of the 0818 that you can get your hands on is the low weight, which can simply be unlocked by just getting 50 kills whilst playing as the support class. So a pretty easy one for you that shouldn't take very long at all to complete. Though to unlock the Suppressive variant, you're first going to need that low weight variant to rack up another 50 kills, and you'll also need to perform 100 resupplies within a round. I'd advise jumping into an operations match to get this one done, as they tend to have longer match times, giving you more chance to get those 100 resupplies. And I'd suggest equipping both the ammo crates and pouches at the same time, and just keep throwing them around at your teammates and dropping the ammo boxes along popular routes of travel. As long as you keep using them both and make it your mission to keep your fellow troops stocked up to the brim with ammunition, you should accumulate those 100 resupplies fairly easily, and get this task done and dusted without any issues. But anyway, let's check out those stats. The lMG 0818's got the same sort of damage output as the MG15, Madsen MG, and the Parabellum, dishing out a maximum damage of 28 up to the range of 11 meters, which will then sharply drop down to 25 at 12 meters, and then gradually become weaker from here, dealing the weapon's minimum damage of 21 at 35 meters and beyond. This means that the 0818 is unsurprisingly going to function in a very similar way to the other lMGs, being able to kill a close range target up to 12 meters in 4 bullets, and then 5 any further than this. But having this specific damage graph also means that the gun's going to be able to secure a free bullet kill on an enemy who happens to be nearby if one of those rounds hits them in the head, as the headshot multiplier is going to bump that damage up to a total of 47.6. Though most of the other LMGs having a maximum damage of 26.5 won't be able to generate enough close range power to bring an opponent down in 3 shots, unless you manage to land 2 on the head, which is a bit tricky to do in a frantic one-on-one gunfight. With all that said, some of the other support weapons that are a tiny bit weaker up close, like the BAR, M1917 and lMG, are capable of delivering a slightly stronger hit over longer distances instead, which basically allows them to kill quicker by scoring headshots against players further away, reducing the bullets to kill down from 5 to 4 at range. So the 0818 will be a slightly more effective weapon for CQC battles, but a teeny bit less so for longer range gunfights. One of the best things about the 0818 is the fact that it can shred through targets at rapid speed, firing those 8mm cartridges at a rate of 600 RPM. So it's not quite as ferocious as the Parabellum, but it's not exactly miles behind, with the 0818 firing at the same speed as the BAR. This pretty much puts it slap bang in the middle of both the MG15NA and the Parabellum, which both deal the same amount of damage, with the MG15 being the slower of the 3 at 500 RPM and the Parabellum blazing ahead at 700. Being one of the second fastest firing LMGs in the game grants the gun with some pretty impressive kill times, making it one of the deadliest support weapons to be up against in a head-on battle, as that fire rate not only allows it to kill quickly up close, but it can also stop players dead in their tracks at range too. Though with the 0818 overheating after about 36 shots, it's not exactly the best LMG for laying down suppressive fire in one continuous stream, so you're probably going to have to burst the gun to some extent to keep those bullets flowing. To complement this speedy rate of fire, the 0818 is gifted with a really high muzzle velocity of 870 meters per second, one of the highest bullet speeds in the whole game. So this is going to decrease those kill times even further, and make it a bit easier to use against players running around far into the distance, as you'll barely need to lead your target's movements with that bullet speed being so fast. It might not pack the biggest punch at longer ranges, with some of the other guns having a slightly higher minimum damage value, but that doesn't really matter too much, as the 0818 is still capable of beating them outright in most cases anyway, due to that higher than average speed and velocity. Now it's not all good news, as the gun might be able to destroy enemies at a rapid rate when those bullets land on target, but that's only when those bullets land on target, as the 0818's pretty frantic recoil pattern can often get in the way of those blisteringly fast kill times, due to some of those bullets whizzing off center. The lMG 0818's got a pretty crazy and often unpredictable recoil pattern, with a vertical value of 0.42 and a horizontal value of 0.575, both being pretty high values for a fully automatic weapon. And we can also see from this that the gun's actually going to kick around from side to side more so than it will jump upwards, making it a generally inaccurate weapon and one that's more prone to missing shots. Despite being the lower value of the two, that vertical recoil value still isn't exactly going to give you a tremendous amount of control either, being one of the highest figures in the support class. So the gun's going to drift upwards a bit more than a lot of the other LMGs when opening fire too, being about as stable as the BAR's Storm variant. All of the BAR variants generally kick upwards a bit more than the 0818, but they all have a much lower horizontal recoil, making them a lot more precise. And because the 0818 is the second least accurate weapon in the support class, just behind the Parabellum, this means that quite a few of your shots are likely to stray off target, especially beyond CQC. So I'd highly advise standing still when firing at an enemy further away, with the gun having a much lower spread value while stationary, all whilst tapping and burst firing the 0818 to try and counter that wild recoil pattern as much as possible. Thankfully, both variants are equipped with a bipod, to make range gunfights less of a struggle, and the low weight version is going to have the better accuracy stats of the two, recovering quicker from recoil, and with it becoming more accurate faster with prolonged fire, due to its spread decreasing at a higher rate per shot. Just like the MG15NA, the lMG 0818's low weight variant has got an ammo capacity of 100 rounds, which is a pretty decent size for an automatic weapon. though this can be doubled up to 200 rounds if you opt for that suppressive variant, giving you even more bullets to hose enemies down with, thus allowing you to stay in the fight for longer without interruption. Because the gun shoots pretty quickly and loses ammunition faster than a lot of the other weapons, this does mean that those chunky drums won't stay full for very long, which is where the suppressive variant's extra 100 rounds might come in handy. But just like other belt-fed weapons with beefy ammo counts, the weapon also has to put up with some pretty nasty reloads, and unlike the Sentry's 0815, the 0818 uses non-disintegrating links, a bit like the Parabellum, meaning tactical reloads will take longer to perform, depending on however many bullets are left over when you choose to reload. A hand crank on the drum has to be turned first to rewind the belt before it gets swapped over, and the more rounds you've used up, the more the crank has to be wound. This means that tactical reloads with the low weight variant can take anywhere between 7.1 to 9.8 seconds, with it typically taking longer for every 25 rounds spent. Though the suppressive variant will take even longer to reload still, with having an even bigger belt, possibly taking up to 12.5 seconds if you reload the gun with under 51 rounds left over. It's a bit quicker to perform an empty reload, taking about 8.43 seconds of your time, which is still pretty slow, but still generally quicker than reloading the gun tactically, unless you've only fired off about 25 bullets first. But generally, you're gonna have to keep an eye on your ammo counter and be prepared to duck for cover whenever you're running low on bullets. But anyway, in conclusion, the lMG 0818 is kinda like the middle ground weapon to pick between the MG15 NA and the Parabellum, with the MG15 being a slightly more composed, chilled out machine, and with the Parabellum MG14 being an absolute psychopath. The 0818 shares a lot of its stats with them both, dealing the same sort of damage, having the same muzzle velocity, and even holding a similar amount of ammo. Though it all comes down to that fire rate, which changes things up a bit, and heavily impacts the time it takes to kill, but at the expense of having a more violent recoil pattern. As although the 0818 might potentially kill faster than the MG15, along with most of the other support lMGs, you'll have to put up with a heavy amount of kick, reducing the gun's accuracy and stability, which could ultimately increase those kill times, down to more of your shots straying off target and going where you don't want them to go. To help combat this issue, both variants are kitted out with a bipod to improve the lMG's precision whilst using a stationary position. Though as a run and gun weapon, the 0818 might excel in close to medium range fights, but will probably let you down otherwise, unless that bipod is being used. This does limit your ability to perform well over all distances, often meaning that the gun isn't quite as versatile or well-rounded as some of the other lMGs in the game. Though when it hits bloody hard, and when you're using the weapon against closer range targets, then you've got plenty of speed and power to put them down quickly, combined with a nice chunky drum holding lots of bullets, allowing you to wipe out multiple opponents one by one, so long as you can tame the beast and land those shots of course. Reload times might give you a few problems along the way, with lengthy reloads being one of the bigger trade-offs for belt-fed lMGs that hold tons of ammo, making you an extremely vulnerable target as you mess around with those drums. Though so long as you account for these reloads and stick to cover whilst you're swapping those drums over, you should be able to survive most of the time, and reap the benefits of having a higher than average ammo capacity too. Generally, those quick kill times combined with that large ammo capacity will allow you to take care of several enemies consecutively without being forced to stop, helping you out in those tricky situations where you're surrounded by the enemy team. And so long as you can handle the gun's crazy recoil and account for those reloads, using the bipod whenever possible to deal with longer range targets, then the 0818 can be a very dangerous weapon to bring along to the fight. It might not be the most dependable thing in the world, but it sure knows how to put players down hard and fast. So that's it for another one guys, hope you enjoyed the guide, subscribe for more Battlefield content, and make sure you hit that like button if the video helped you out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in our next episode.